Hello, my name's Charles Hopkins. I'm a UNESCO chair at York University in Toronto. My particular role is creating a network of faculties of education or other teacher education institutions around the world, looking at how to prepare new teachers and the in service of existing teachers to address the issues of sustainable development. The project began in 1999, and we now have fellow institutions in over 70 countries around the world. The concept of education for sustainable development came about in 1992. That's where it emerged at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. But from 1992 on, it struggled because the basic idea of education for sustainable development was to use the world's education systems to try and reorient their purposes, whether it was education systems in primary, elementary, secondary, even in particular higher education, which plays an extremely important role, to address the various sustainability issues that were out there, whether they're social, environmental, economic, and so on. It really was not moving forward very much. It just seemed as too big a task. It was interpreted often as sustainability education and other add-on of the adjectival educations. And so Japan took the leadership with support from Canada and a number of other countries to create a decade from 2005 to 2014, 10 years to try and focus on how we could reorient the world's education systems. At the very end of the decade, the largest gathering of ministers of education anywhere in the world had got together in Japan at Aichi, Nagoya. One of the premises in it was that school systems, ministries of education and their school systems needed to revisit the very purpose of their education. Why are we educating people? And in that, to pursue the idea of what is a quality education. Can you really have quality that does not address the future? The ministers of education realized, though, that the work was not done. We just had a good beginning. And so two things emerged. One is a global action program on education for sustainable development. Bigger than that is within the Millennium Development Goals that ran from 2000 to 2015 have now been replaced in the next 15-year program from 2015 to 2030 called the Agenda 2030. And within that, there are 17 big overarching goals that deal with sustainable development. And the fourth goal is on education, the role that education will play not only in itself, but the education that is needed to actually achieve the other 16 goals. Education for sustainable development includes access and retention in quality education for all. And of course, the UN does not control any country's education system. No. Education is either a state, provincial, or a national responsibility. But what the UN is trying to do is to facilitate and help countries by bringing forward policy advice, bringing forward research. We're working on is how to improve, using ESD, how to improve the education of indigenous and marginalized youth around the world. And we're hoping that by, number one, modifying the content to address what the young people see as their environmental, social, and economic issues. What do they really feel they need and want to learn? And secondly, modifying the pedagogy, how we teach, to address the idea that most education systems around the world approach education through the lens of reading. And that is not the preferred learning style of most young people around the world. It is so important that we move this from being an option within faculties of education, because it addresses the concept of education for all. It addresses the core disciplines. Every discipline has something to contribute. And then how do we address earning a vocation? How do we address those qualities within everyone with truth, honesty? How do we build a sense of responsibility for one taking charge of their own lifelong learning? These aspects require all of the members of faculties of education, and it addresses and engages every single teacher candidate. I hope this has been helpful and has stirred something within you to think about what you can do to contribute to a more sustainable future for all, and not a future that is limited to humans alone, but to all living things.